Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar session, Customizing CK-12 FlexBooks and Adaptive Practice. I'm Lindsay, one of the CK-12 team members, and my colleague Katie and I will be running today's webinar. Want to wish you a warm welcome. It looks like we have people from all across the United States, and I saw that it's 2 a.m. in Japan. I saw somebody from Thailand, Calgary, Canada. Welcome. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Many of you who are joining us are participating in the CK-12 Certified Educator Program. So to all of you, welcome back. If you are brand new to the Certified Educator Program and would like to learn more and officially register with us, you can visit www.ck12.org/certified and press register to get started. We've recently revamped this program and it includes 4 components. Just a reminder to all of you that there are 2 on-demand sessions that you would watch on your own time. You would attend 3 core live webinar sessions, complete the matching assignments for all of the sessions, and then complete a final form requesting your certificate. Since this session counts as one of those core live sessions, you'll already be a third of the way through that requirement at the end of this hour. So I hope that all of you will visit ck12.org/certified if you need more information about the program. We can stay on at the end of this webinar and answer some questions, or you're welcome to type them into the Q&A window for our team to answer privately. Before we get started, I do want to make sure that you're comfortable with our 2 Zoom windows here. You'll notice that there's a window for Q&A and that there's a window for chat. The window for Q&A is for you to type any questions that you have that you need an answer from the CK-12 team. Katie will be stopping periodically throughout her demo today, and we'll be fielding some of those questions live. We also have Monique and Carl and Tuscany who will be typing answers to a lot of questions as well. So any questions about CK-12 you have for our team, put in the Q&A window. The chat window is where we would love for you all to have a community conversation, which you're already off and running with that. Feel free to introduce yourselves, where you're from, if you're an educator, where you teach. The trick in the chat window, though, is to make sure everybody sees your message. And in order to do that, you need to change from all panelists, say all panelists and attendees. If you just send it to panelists, the CK-12 team, we're the only ones who get to see that. But if you change it to all panelists and attendees, everybody will be able to see your post. I also wanted to remind you that we are recording today's webinar, and it will be posted within 24 hours on our webinars page for you all to view later on if you need to. So why don't I go ahead and kick it over to Katie.
Thanks, Lindsay. So today's session is going to cover the following topics. We'll start with FlexBook editing, so customizing, combining, rearranging, and editing, and even creating your own FlexBook 2.0 books and lessons, and then curating the related content that goes in those newer books. We'll then move into customizing practice, so creating what we call a quiz on CK-12, using these quizzes independently or within FlexBooks as practice or inline questions, and then what those reports look like based on usage of CK-12 quizzes. And finally, what happens after you customize? So we'll talk about how you can assign, share, publish, and add your content to a school's page.
I do want to mention that we have 2 resource pages that you might find useful for this session. I think we'll put them in the chat window. I know that we put them in earlier for you, but just 2 links that you can access later. You can download them, you can print them off and save them, just handy reference pages. The first one is tinyurl.com/CK-12 ADVFB 2019, like Advanced FlexBook Editing 2019. Just a resource page there. And then the second one is more about customizing CK-12 adaptive practice and assignments. And you can access that link at, again, a tiny URL, CK-12 Custom AP 2019. Just for reference, it's not mandatory that you do anything with those, but we'll put them in the chat window for you to access. As we go through this session, we'll be covering the big ideas behind customization of FlexBooks and practice. At the same time, you may find that you want more information on certain pieces, whether now or down the road when you do more customization. While we're happy to stay on afterward and answer any questions, do note that you can find more information and step-by-step directions about the following in our quick overview section of the CEP FlexBook. And that includes finding, uploading, formatting, and giving attribution to images, finding and using embed codes for videos, interactives, and Google slide presentations, creating and curating modalities on CK-12 to add as related content like lesson plans and videos, using CK-12's math editor, creating your own questions for quizzes, and then multi-concept assignments for CK-12 classes, plus more resources related to CK-12 classes. All right, with that, let's get started with editing CK-12 FlexBooks.
Thanks, Lindsay. So if you're starting with a CK-12 FlexBook or one that another user has made on our site, you can simply click the Customize button to make a copy that you can then begin to edit. If you want to pull from multiple existing books and kind of combine, create an integrated book or something like that, you can use the Add to FlexBook option to add individual lessons, chapters from our legacy content, or whole books to an existing or a brand new FlexBook that you're creating. You can also go to your library to start a FlexBook or a FlexBook 2.0 from scratch. There you will also find any work that you've been customizing or creating. Now, once you start with a FlexBook, whether that's customizing or creating a brand new one, you can use various options at the table of contents level. So we'll go ahead and swap over and talk about basic edits. So the first option is to delete sections or even whole chapters, and you can reorder the content using that little drag arrow option. This is especially helpful if you add in new content, as any new content that you add to your FlexBook will always show up at the bottom of the table of contents, and then you can drag it where it belongs. Now, from within the FlexBook editor, you can also add new chapters and even create new sections, whether you use them as a traditional text lesson, as a bucket to embed media, or as a combination of the two. Now, one note, the best practice is to stick with a single tab that you're working on so that you work sequentially and you make sure that you're saving your work in order and not jumping back and forth and accidentally saving something out of order. Now, in addition to the whole kind of book content updates, you can make lesson edits. So if you click on the pencil edit icon that's next to any section of a FlexBook, or if you create a new lesson, what we call a read, you'll have access to our editor at the top there. There you can directly adjust or write any text, and you can use our toolbar for special formatting and media. Now, 4 icons I want to be sure to point out are our math text and math editor option. So this allows you to create formatted math text using the little X that pops up the math editor, or convert text directly in line. So that new M that's available is if you know how to write the code for a math equation, you can highlight it and click that and it'll auto convert for you. So you don't even need to use that editor if you want to skip a step and you know what you're doing there. The next thing is our image upload option. And here, this includes an option to upload a file. That's the best recommended piece, so the link doesn't break down the road. And also the needed attributions and licensing notes. So be sure to check that out when you're adding new images to our system. And then the last one that I want to point out today is our media option. So that little play strip there with the film strip with the play button on it allows you to embed interactives, videos, and more. And you just paste the standard embed code there. Now, if it's grayed out like that, you're probably in a header or a bulleted list. So just make sure you click in a regular paragraph and then that should be available to you to use. A few other things to think about when editing. So if you're editing a section of a FlexBook, you have some other tab options to complete. The first one after edit is resources. Now, this is a place that you can upload answer keys, labs, anything else you want your students to access as separate files. Just make sure that anything you add still fits under our license because you're sharing it within CK-12. These will then show up under the resources in the toolbar for that particular section. Now, after the resources tab is our details tab. Here you can add in or adjust lesson objectives. So let's click over to the details tab. There we go. And vocabulary, and most importantly, any new source or other credit attribution. So if you're pulling in content that you're writing in there and you need to cite it accordingly, make sure that happens in that details tab. Once saved, these will show up under the same toolbar, but down at the bottom under concept details. Now, one final tab that shows up in any lesson included within a FlexBook 2.0. So this only shows up if you're working in FlexBook 2.0. It has one additional tab titled Related. So here you'll see the matching curated modalities if you're starting from a CK-12 FlexBook. And you have the option to remove any you don't want to have anymore and add in any that you want to add in. You can also use this tab to swap out the matching practice for a quiz, but we will talk about kind of quizzes later in this session. Now, these curated modalities show up under Other Ways to Learn when you first open a section from the table of contents. And once you click Start or Open from within a lesson or an assignment, you can find them in the toolbar under Related Content. So with that, I think I'm going to borrow this screen, and we're going to go ahead over and show you what this looks like on our site. So let me go ahead and click Share. And you can see CK-12. So from here, let's talk about customizing versus adding to a FlexBook. So the first thing I might do is start with a FlexBook that exists. So let's say I'm teaching middle school science, and I really teach more of an integrated science class. So maybe I'll start with a physical science FlexBook. In this case, I'm working from the 2.0 book. And so that customize option is not found to the left, but found directly under the table of contents here. And I can click Customize. And this will take this whole book that CK-12 owns and make a copy of it for me to work with. And so once it loads that thing, the first thing I recommend doing is changing the CK-12 to whatever your school is or your name is or something like that. And I'm going to say physical and earth science for middle school because I'm going to add in earth science in a minute. Now you can see here our content is available. Let's say I'm not going to get to electromagnetism and magnetism this year. I can just simply delete those by removing a whole chapter with the X. Do that again for another chapter. I can talk about sound before waves by switching it around, although that probably doesn't make as much sense because sound is waves, so let's put that back there. And I can even open up any chapter by clicking on this little arrow option and toggling it open. And then I can do the same thing within a lesson, within a chapter. So I could delete any one of these sections using the remove option. I could rearrange the order using that. And if I wanted to combine chapters, I would just open up two different chapters and drag from within one to within the other. So you do need to kind of open those buckets to make that change there. Now, I have a couple of other options. So I can add content directly from within here. So let's say I want to add a new chapter. So this is a demo chapter for May. I'm going to go ahead and add that. And if you remember, we said that when you add new things, they show up at the bottom of your table of contents. So here I have this demo chapter right at the bottom, and I can move it anywhere that I wanted within this particular piece. So keep that in mind kind of as we go. Now, I said I wanted to combine two different books together. So the first thing is that I took a book that I wanted to start with and I customized it. Totally fine, great. I'm going to now save my work. I want to stay within one clean tab to make sure that my saves are progressive. And the next thing I would do is go back to the home page, and I'm going to go click on that CK-12 icon to get me back there. And I could pull it up from here under what do I want to teach today or under our subjects menu. And I'm going to pull up the Earth Science book. Now, if I click Customize again, this will create another version of the Earth Science book that I can work with. But I want to create an integrated science book. So instead of choosing Customize, I'm going to choose this Add to FlexBook option. And because this is a 2.0 FlexBook, I have to stay within that environment. So it just gives you the option to add to an existing 2.0 FlexBook. And you can see here that I could create a new one from scratch if I wanted to. Or today's My School Physical and Earth Science for Middle School book is the one I want to add this to. So I'm going to go ahead and say, great, I'm going to add this book in here. And it says it was successfully added. So let's check. Now, all of the work that I've been editing, working on, customizing, all exists in my library. You can access that from the tab from the home page. Or if you're within the 2.0 environment, just go up to your name and then click on My Library to access your library from there. Now here you'll see at the very top this My School Physical and Earth Science for Middle School book that we have going. It's just loading my library, adding all those pieces in there. And you can see some other work that I might have done earlier, a practice I added to my library or a quiz. But let's go ahead and open up that FlexBook. Now I own this FlexBook. You can tell by the title. You can also tell by the fact that it has my name listed there. That's different than the authors. The authors are the people who wrote the book, but this kind of bucketing structure is the one I'm working off of. And you can see here that in addition to the sections from physical science that I have for chapters 1 through 20, and then my kind of break chapter, I now have all of the earth science chapters in here as well. So I can go ahead and I can click edit, because I'm not going to customize a book I already own. I'm just going to make future edits to it. So here, if I was going to do this, I could pick a topic. So let's go ahead and open up a section. And I could do all the same things again, rearranging, ordering, removing sections. But I'm going to go actually into a section and start editing the lesson itself so you can see what that looks like. So let's talk about scientific notation. And what it's going to do is it's going to make a copy of that section so that I can make edits without changing the CK-12 one. Now, if I want my title to be the same, I'm just going to leave it as scientific notation. And now I can go in and I can make any changes I want here. So you can see that I have some text here. I have, it looks like an embedded media. If I click on this media option, I can preview it and see what it is. So here it looks like it's a video on converting. I have different text here, and I can go in and I can upload or edit an image. You can see here that it has the source and credit information, inline or figure options, all sorts of choices for editing or adding images. And then our newest little piece, our math one, I'll just show you because this is new. So let's say I wanted x to the power of 2. If I highlight this and convert it to math text, it converts it already. If you don't know anything about coding for math, I can just use my regular math editor. So keep that in mind that that's still an option, but we thought for people that wanted to shortcut it, that just convert option might be helpful. So that's our newest little feature in our customizing piece that many of you may be unaware of. So check that particular piece out. Now, as we said, within a lesson, in addition to the actual text that you can edit here, we have our resources tab, so I could upload the files there. I have details. So in this case, we have a description, learning objectives, the author, this is physical science, kind of all these pieces, and even the concept that it's related to, which is scientific notation. And then the last tab here is our related content. So you can see we have, this is our little Plix icon here. So we have 2 Plix interactives, a real world application, and 2 videos that we want to work off of from here. Now let's say I don't need this video anymore. I can just click the X and remove it, or I could go and I want to add additional modalities. And so the first thing it's going to pull up is all of the concepts that modalities that CK-12 has tied to that concept of scientific notation. And I could attach an additional lesson or read that they wanted to work off of. I could add, let's say, this video in instead. And now I have that video in place of the original one. This is also where, and I'm just going to show you while I'm in here, if I pulled from my quizzes, this would swap the existing practice out for the quiz. So because I want the practice to still stay in here, we're going to leave that alone. But I did change the related content a bit. And I'm going to click finalize on this draft. So don't worry, when you click finalize, you can always go back and edit again. But the finalize option means that I'm done working on this round of edits, and it will become available to my students or anyone with the link after I click finalize. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And now we'll be able to see that particular section within the context of the FlexBook. So you can see here that we have the lesson itself. I removed that little extra math piece. But if I click on that toolbar and pull up my related content, you'll see that new video that I had there instead of the original one that was in there, because I wanted to include that particular piece. The last thing I want to just mention is if I wanted to create a book from scratch, I would do the same thing. I'm going to go ahead and go back to CK-12 so you can see me access the library from the home page. So here or under your name, if you're in 2.0, I can go to my library. And from here, I could create a new FlexBook, either one of our original ones or a 2.0 book. And I highly recommend that you stick with creating the FlexBook 2.0 option, because that adds the newer interface, it adds insights, it adds related content, it has kind of all the different pieces that you want. So that's where you'd want to go if you were going to create a new option from there. And that would just give you a blank structure, and then you'd build chapters like I put my demo chapter in there, and you'd build lessons under that same toolbar for creating a new read, and you'd add it all together. So let's see what we have for questions that might be coming in so far, and we will go from there.
Awesome. Katie, I think one thing that I need to mention that I'm not sure we did earlier is that CK-12 Foundation is a nonprofit, and everything that we offer is free. So there is no charge for our FlexBooks or practice or quizzes or anything that you're seeing today. It's all free, which is exciting. There was a question, or I guess a request to demo something. It says, she discussed that chapters can be combined. Would it be possible to demo that? So
Sure,
just want to do a reminder of how to combine chapters.
Yep. Yeah, let me actually pick my demo chapter because it doesn't have anything in it. So I'll show you how to pull stuff into that. And then you can basically remove a previous chapter. So let's go ahead and try that one more time. Click edit, see if it loads. There we go. So if you wanted to pull content into a chapter or combine multiple chapters, what you would do, and we'll just start at the bottom to make this simple. This is beyond the solar system and solar system. So let's say I wanted to create one chapter on the solar system instead of two different options, kind of the solar system and beyond. So I would just open up both of them by toggling this piece, and then I would start dragging from one chapter to another. So that one, let's try that again. There we go. Star constellations, dwarf planets. And I would just move this content into here, and I could kind of rearrange as needed as I went through. And then when I was done, I could just delete or remove that empty chapter. So you just want to open up both chapters and then pull the sections from one into the other, and then you can just remove the extra chapter that you no longer need. And if you want to change this title, you would then say, okay, let's call this the solar system and beyond, because now I've started pulling the beyond chapter into there. And you'll see that that title has now been updated to include both of those pieces.
As people are thinking about what book they might want to start with, do you want to just briefly show them what our schools page has on it, and then maybe how to find other community contributed books?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So we have our core options under kind of our subjects that you guys can see that we offer here, both content created by us, content created by partners, some UGC or user created content that we've kind of surfaced just so you have a sense of what's available, such as some of our social studies content. But you are welcome to search for a particular topic. So you could search, let's say, for literature, and you'd want to do that not within this FlexBook, but in all of CK-12, because that's a broader topic than physics and neuroscience. And that would allow you to kind of see your content here or click over to see community created content. So that's an option to go from there. The other place that community created content shows up, as Lindsay was saying, is in our schools page, and that's found under Explore. So if I click on Explore from anywhere on our site, and then I click on, oops, not study guides, let's go back one. So if I click on our schools page right above that, it will take you to your schools page. And it's preset to about where you are in the US or outside the US. If I, let's say, went to Texas, for example, I know that's where some of our social studies content we surfaced coming from. And you can see, for example, a district called El Paso that's created not only customized versions of our content, but even has gone so far as to create some environmental science content, some economics, history, social studies, and even English content. So you may find that useful as a place to start, especially if you're working outside of STEM content, is kind of exploring not only across the school pages to see what you have, but also to kind of network with schools and districts that might be nearby you already doing work tailored to your specific local and state standards.
Great. I encourage everybody to keep the questions coming in. I'm going to take the screen back from Katie because I think a lot of the questions that are coming in are actually about kind of the part 2 of our webinar. So Katie just covered how to customize a FlexBook, but we also have adaptive practice that you're able to customize into quizzes. And I know several questions have been asked about that. So let's talk about it. I think the first thing that we need to cover is the difference between the two, and how they're similar. So in our FlexBook 2.0 platform webinar, we talked about CK-12 adaptive practice, which adjusts to students' levels and even offers recommendations for further learning. You are always more than welcome to use that tool, but if you want to tailor student practice, you create what we call a quiz. So I want to make sure that you understand the difference between quizzes and adaptive practice. They both can pull from our database of 150,000 math, science, and spelling questions. However, quizzes also give you the option to create your own questions and use them. You can assign quizzes like practice, but student reports are based on the percentage of questions they got right, unlike our practice, which always has the goal of getting 10 answers correct, regardless of how many questions are completed. You also have various options for quizzes, from picking the order of questions to setting time limits. Remember that CK-12 won't override any of these choices by adapting to student performance or stopping them to provide recommendations. If you want those features, you'll still need to use CK-12 adaptive practice as is.
So the first thing you might want to know is how to create a quiz. So you can begin one from scratch by going to your library, just like I did to show you a new FlexBook option. And then when you click Create New, instead of picking the FlexBook, pick Quiz. From there, you can pull from existing questions in our database, or you can create your own questions. Now, alternatively, you could click Customize when accessing practice from any of the different varieties there, whether that's our practice browse, a practice lesson in one of our older system, or the Customize option within 2.0. And when you click on Customize, when accessing practice, this will automatically include a subset of that practice as kind of the starting point for your quiz there. Now, once you start with a new quiz or you click Customize, the first thing you want to do is pick a title for your quiz. And I generally recommend that it indicates the purpose or the topics covered, since that will make it easier to use than if you use a date for the title of a quiz. I'll show you what that looks like down the road when I demo kind of swapping out quizzes and practice. You can also add a description of the quiz, but that's just kind of for you to see when you're in it, and it may help you remember kind of what's included or why you created it. Now, once you have a title, you can choose your setting options. This includes limiting the number of tries a student gets to complete a quiz, setting the time limit for the whole quiz. There is a language option, but in general, you'll want to stick with English as a language, as that is the option for the majority of our questions. If you wanted to write your own questions in Spanish or Portuguese, you have that choice right now because we've been doing some work with partners. And there is a small subset of questions that go with those languages. But in general, you'd pick English to work with. And then below that are the options to allow students to see hints, to see solutions for questions after they answer them, and to even auto shuffle questions for each student. Now, note that if you pick the auto shuffle option, you do lose the ability to choose the order of questions within the editor. So when we get there and I show you what that looks like, if the drag arrow order option is grayed out, it's probably because you shuffled it. And we're just reminding you that the order is not going to show up that way, regardless of where they got put within that particular section. And the newest, coolest option there that we had just right at the end was our save option. I just do want to mention that it's actually not on this screen. It was on the previous screen. There we go, on the allow students to pause and resume. That just got launched this spring. It's super helpful for, especially for those of you guys that kind of use customized practice, not really as a quiz or an assessment, but actually as homework. And you want students to be able to do some and pause it and save their work and then resume. If you don't select that, each time they access the quiz, they will have to start from scratch. So keep that in mind. Now, once you've picked your general settings, it is time to pick your concepts and questions. So if you started by customizing practice, you'll see the first concept is already included. It usually defaults to randomly selected maybe 20 questions from any available ones in our system. Now, if not, or you want to, like if you haven't started from customizing, if you're starting from scratch, or if you want to add another concept, then you can click the Add Question Set option. From there, you can search to find a CK-12 concept to pull into your quiz, or you can choose that Create New Questions at the top. If you include multiple concepts, you can see the order of the questions noted, and to reorder, just hover over that number and drag the box before or after another concept. Now, once any concept is included, you can adjust the number of questions, at which point the system will randomly pick a variety of easy, medium, and hard questions from various types to match the number that you selected. And while this is an easy way to adjust the number of questions, it does pull a new set each time to kind of factor in that number and what's available. So if you want to handpick your questions, or you already have handpicked your questions, just don't go ahead and change that number there. We will warn you. The system does a nice pop-up to warn you before you actually click out and change that. Now, if you do want to handpick those questions that I just noted, you're going to click on the pencil edit icon. That's our great edit option. So just hover over any concept box and you'll be able to see it. And this will open up the randomly selected questions and any other questions available for that concept. You can then preview them, reorder them, and select or deselect questions based on whichever ones you want to include. Now, if you want to create your own questions, you can do so using the Create New Questions or the Add Questions options. The first will allow you to create questions related to any concept on CK-12, or even tag them to a lesson that you have created. The second option adds questions to the existing concept that you are already in, that you're adding those questions to. Once in the question editor, you'll want to pick the type of question first. This then gives you kind of all the other preset options that go with that question. Your options include multiple choice, select all that apply, true, false, fill in the blank, short answer, drag and drop, which matches an answer to a category, highlighting, which is kind of like circling a correct answer, and discussion. That last one has no right or wrong answers, but is a great general prompt for a conversation in class. Now, after you pick your question type, fill in the pieces, including the question, answer and/or distractors, hints if you want, level of difficulty, and any details. If you're creating a question and not simply adding one to a concept, you will need to make sure that you choose the CK-12 concept you want to associate it with, or match it to a lesson in your library. Just like when adding new sections to a FlexBook, any new question you will add will show up at the bottom of questions already chosen for a concept. You can then drag it to the place you want within the quiz to order accordingly. Now, once you've made a quiz, there are 3 options you have for using that quiz. First off, you could swap out the practice included in a 2.0 FlexBook, or simply add a quiz if no practice already exists. At that point, you could assign the 2.0 lesson to your class, and you would get a report on the lesson with the quiz included. If you wanted a report for student work on the quiz, but you didn't want to replace the existing practice because you wanted students to have a chance to practice first with that 2.0 lesson, then you can assign the quiz separately using the Assign to Class button on the quiz page itself. The final way to use custom questions is by embedding them into a lesson. We call these inline questions because they appear in line with the text that you have within that lesson. These can be great to help students learn as they work their way through a lesson. However, you will not get a separate report for these questions since they are geared towards learning versus assessment. And students do need to successfully complete each question before moving on to the next one. That requirement to complete them correctly is one of the reasons why we recommend that you include feedback for wrong answers if you intend to use a CK-12 quiz as inline questions for a lesson. Now, the first 2 options I just talked about, swapping out practice and assigning a 2.0 lesson, or assigning a quiz directly, will generate a report for that quiz. The report score is based on the % of questions that were correct out of the total number of the questions. This is different from adaptive practice scores that have a general goal of 10 correct, regardless of the number of questions completed. So just like in practice, if you click on any specific score, it will pop up the details for all attempts for that quiz. For quizzes attached to 2.0 lessons, you can also see information under the lesson insights from within a 2.0 lesson. Now, while practice gives you the time spent on the lesson, like it does for a quiz, and the skill level, quizzes give you the time on the lesson and the % score for that quiz. So I think with that, I'm going to jump back into live and show you what this looks like on our site. So let's say I wanted to start a quiz from scratch. Once again, I would go to my library. I would click Create New, and then I would choose Quiz. And from here, I would pick all of my components, my title, my limit, my numbers, and I'd start by adding a question set. So that's one option. You can always start from scratch there. Now, if instead I wanted to, let's say, customize and create a scientific notation quiz and start from CK-12, I could do it a couple different ways. I could explore my practice questions by going through our general adaptive practice browse option. And we could say, okay, let's look at physical science. And we could talk about introduction. I think it was somewhere in here. Scientific skills, scientific notation. There we go. Click on that. And I could click customize right here, kind of browsing that practice as a whole. So anywhere you see that customize option, it's available. Or I could use that little logo to get back to our page. I'm going to go to my library. This is what I find the easiest option if you're going to start from customizing. And I'm going to open up that section. So that section was, I think, 129. So let's go ahead and find that section, scientific notation, click Start. And from here, you'll see that because this was already tagged to that concept of scientific notation, I see practice available here. As a teacher, I see view practice. As a student, I'd be able to start that practice and see how I did on that practice. Now, I could preview this, or I could click this option and download a worksheet if I had students that needed paper assessment or practice there, or I could click customize directly from here. So this way you don't have to go searching anywhere for a topic. You're working in a FlexBook, you want to customize that practice into a quiz, just click customize right on it. And it will take, as we said, that practice, a subset of that practice, and make it available right off the bat. So now we're starting with a particular topic right in here. So I'm going to call this my scientific notation quiz. And we'll do the same thing I did in April, but we're going to call this one May. If I can type today. There we go. I am going to set the number of attempts at, let's say, 3. Kids can have a couple tries at this, go from there. Don't care how long it takes them to go. And I do want to allow students to pause and resume this because I'm not using it really as an assessment. I'm using it as homework that they can work their way through. I can go ahead and I can change this number. Let's set this down to, let's say, 8. And if I click outside this to save it, I will get the pop-up that says it's going to pull a brand new set of 8 questions. Are you sure you want to reset that number? Well, in this case, I haven't handpicked anything, so that's totally fine. We're good to go. We can go ahead and pull that in there. I might even want to add another question set. So this is what I would do if I was starting a question set from scratch, a quiz from scratch. I would just click the add question set option. I could search for a topic. See what we get here. We have some chemistry and physics ones that we pulled from already, but it looks like there's some more ones in arithmetic. That makes sense. It's a math skill as well. So I could go ahead, I could pull a subset of those questions and select that. And it's going to, once again, pull a random subset of questions. I can rearrange that number again, do whatever I want here, and click outside of it. It's going to warn me every time so I don't mess that up there. Now, if I wanted to actually hand pick these questions, I could go ahead and click Edit, that little pencil edit icon. See if we can trigger that if I'm actually clicking it. There we go. And you can see the 8 questions that the system picked. There's some medium, some hard, a fill in the blank, multiple choice, an easy one, true, false question. All of those are available here. This little arrow option toggles down and I can see what that question looked like, preview it as a student, check it, even see if there's any hints available there. All of that's kind of part of that process. I can then say, that's great, but maybe I don't need them to do this one. And maybe I really like, let's see what this one is. Verify if this plus that equals that. That is false. I like that question, so we're going to go ahead and add that one in. So I've handpicked my questions in here. We deselected one, we picked another one, and I'm even going to add a new question. So if I want to add a new question here, I can click that add question. And this question should be related to the topic of scientific notation because it will automatically tag it to this concept. I'm adding a concept or a question to this particular topic that already exists within our system. So it's not like I'm starting from scratch. It's really that I'm kind of adding to that piece. And the first thing I want to do is pick my type of question. So right now I'm in multiple choice, which is anything that has 1, 2, or 3 answers already available in here. I can even remove the extra one, that's fine, but it needs 3 answer types. If I wanted 2, I would use true, false as my answer choices, and I can always change that content. If I wanted a short answer, I could click on that, and it's gonna say, you're changing your question type. Yep, I understand. I can write up to 3 words within here, and let's say my answer was 1/2, and I wanted to put 0.0 or 0.5 as another answer. So if there's something where you have different answers when either one would be available and acceptable, then make sure you put those alternate correct answers in there as well. I'm gonna create a, let's say, fill in the blank question. So I want this to, let's say, rewrite 1,386 in scientific notation. And when I do that, I would say 1.386 times 10 to the power of 3. And I might want to make that 3 a power, and I want to add that as one of my answer pieces, and I want to add this first part as one of my answer pieces. And those are the 2 parts that the kids are going to fill in when they complete this particular question. Now, I could add in a step-by-step solution. I could add a hint. Don't forget to move the decimal point. Pick my thing, and you can see that this concept is already tagged to scientific notation. Now, if I was creating a brand new thing within new pieces and I needed to tag it, I would click this plus to add a tag, and I could search for a topic. Let's try to actually spell that. And I could pick a topic that it was assigned to. Let's say I want to add it to arithmetic as well. I can then delete that extra one. But because I'm adding it to here, I do have to keep that piece. Now, let's say I was adding it to literature. See if there's anything in my library and literature. If it's not a concept that exists in CK-12, I can search my library, and it looks like I have a lesson on writing about literature that I could tag it to. So if you're creating content outside of math and science, or a concept, let's say in a lower level grade that we don't already have in our system, you could create a lesson in your library or in a FlexBook and then tag this particular question to that, just like I was doing here. So let's go ahead and remove that because that makes no sense in this case. And then I could add in some other pieces if I wanted to. But in general, I have to have a concept. I have to have the question prompt and the correct answers in order to be able to submit this. And once I go ahead and click submit, I can actually preview this question and see what it looks like, or I can preview it within the quiz itself. So let's say we're done, we're good to go. If I clicked preview, I would then just click update and done and be good. And it looks like it pulled a piece there. So let's go ahead and click back for a second and see if I can trigger that piece again. So this is our scientific notation May quiz. We're gonna open it one more time. Within my library, I can click edit. And you'll see that we have 8 questions that we had here, 4 questions that we had here. I'm gonna go ahead and click edit. Probably was unhappy with me adding it to 20 different concepts while I was trying to demo a bunch of stuff. But you can see here that we have questions already there. And then this particular question is the one that I actually wrote. So that's the only one that I can edit. The other ones exist in our system. We don't have that choice there. It looks like it pulled that one in, and it actually pulled in the last one at the end as well, because it was trying to save both of those at the same time. So you'll see it down near the bottom. I can actually preview that question right now. And you can see that it's 1.386. And let's say I did 10 to the second accidentally. It's going to give me notice that I got part of that right, part of that wrong, but the student would not get credit for that because they didn't get it completely correct. So that's how I'd add questions in there. Once I'm done, I'd click save. And if I wanted to rearrange the order, I could drag them this way. So once I have all of this stuff in here, I'm going to just update anything and save that quiz. So now it exists within my library as I did that work. Once it's done saving, I can go ahead to my library and I can start using this quiz accordingly. So let's go back to my library, or in this case, opening the quiz itself from my library. And the first option that we talked about is I could assign this directly to my class. So I could assign it to my class if I'm using CK-12 classes or Google Classroom directly from here. Or if I'm using Canvas or Schoology, I would open up that app or that external tool, and I would click on the My Library option and pull up this quiz from my library to assign it. So this is now available to be assigned as is and go from there. The second piece that I might need to pull, so let's see here, is embed as inline questions. So if I wanted to use this inline in the context of a lesson, I would click on this embed as inline questions, and then I would copy this embed code, copy, and I would use that and I could paste that within that lesson. And I'll show you what inline questions look like in a minute, but that gives you an idea for one option. Just remember that you will need to pull the embed code from the actual quiz in your library. So let's go back to my library for a second, and you'll see two things at the top there. You'll see the scientific notation, May quiz that I just created, and then my school physical and earth science. So let's go ahead and open up this book. And I said that you could swap out the practice for a quiz from that related content when editing within a book itself, but you could also do it as long as you've kind of finalized your content so far by clicking on, and as you're browsing a lesson, you can swap out the practice for a quiz. So just where I clicked customize on it beforehand, right here where I view practice, instead of clicking download worksheet or customize, I could pick a different concept, tag it to different practice in our system, or I could switch it to a quiz. So in this case, I'm going to swap this as a quiz. And this is where this does me no good, this does me no good. This is helpful, middle school math 7, end of lesson quiz, that's somewhat useful. Scientific notation May, even better. I know exactly what that is. I know that's the quiz I'm working off of, and I want to go ahead and I want to add that in here. So that's why I recommend that you put the title or some sort of indication of what you're swapping out to make life super simple. So now instead of view practice, I have view quiz here. And if I were to assign this lesson to my students, it would include the text of this lesson and the matching quiz. I would not need to assign that quiz separately because it would be included in this 2.0 lesson. The last option to create things would be to put them inline, as I said, using that embed option. And I'm just going to show you what that looks like in a math book because our middle school math books have done a great job using inline questions. So let's go ahead and open up a particular lesson. And if I click start on here, you can see they just use the same play button embed code option that I showed from there. And underneath a lot of interactives, they've put these inline questions here. So let's check that. Nope. Retry. It says, how would you use the number line to 4 plus 7? Start at 4, move 7 units to the left to get -3, then add -7 to get -3. Those are the two pieces. And now that I got that right, I can continue forward. So this is how it would show up as inline questions if you were going from there. So just keep in mind that this doesn't give you a score. Swapping out that practice for a quiz would give you a score if you assigned it, and assigning that quiz separately would give you a score. And those would show up in your classes. So let's look at what that looks like for just a split second before we take some questions and wrap up some stuff here. But if I went in here and I opened up a lesson and I clicked on reports, I could see here, this is an example quiz. So mass, matter, and volume. I can see that Lindsay got, let's see, a 75% on her first attempt and 87.5% on her second attempt. So that's giving me that 88% piece. And the actual questions and pieces that she got there. So this score, percentage score, is based on correct out of total number. And then you can see that fraction there, streak, skipped, time, and the actual answers. So that would be a quiz, and you get the same score if you used a quiz as a single assignment or as part of a 2.0 lesson. So that's one option to see a report on that quiz. Now, if I had swapped out that quiz practice for a quiz, let's go ahead and look at assignments for a second. And let's look at, let's see, we have 2.0 with practice, we have 2.0 with a quiz. So in this case, I swapped that quiz out in that particular piece, and I'm actually going to do that one more time just so you see it. So this is the assignment piece, and this is the link to the assignment. You would access it the same way, whether you're accessing this in a CK-12 class, in Google Classroom, in Canvas, or Schoology. If you click on the link for the actual assignment, it will open up that assignment, and in that 2.0 environment. And you can see this lesson with the view quiz piece here. And that's where I would then click on the toolbar and open insights. So this is one of the advantages for our 2.0 lessons. And we keep adding to our insights. So we highly recommend that you kind of stick in that 2.0 environment. And I can go ahead and I can click new on here. I'm gonna open that up and see what they are. Now, if you've come from Canvas or Google Classroom or Schoology, then it will automatically have your class tagged right there. In this case, because it's CK-12, I can see all of my classes. I'm gonna go ahead and open that class, and I can once again see that Lindsay got an 88, 7 out of 8 correct, and the time they spent on the lesson and where that time was spent on that particular lesson. And I can go ahead through here as well, see these different pieces. It looks like the last 2 students haven't turned in their quiz assignment, maybe haven't even started it in this case. There's no time on that piece. So just keep in mind that if you swap out the quiz or you assign it separately, I get insights and a score attached to it. If you use it as inline, embedded, just like a video is, you're not getting a score for that particular piece. So Lindsay, how are we doing on questions?
Well, we've got some coming in. Let's take a few right now before we go into some wrap up and people type in their final questions. We have one about printing. Where are the printable worksheets? And then the second question is can we create worksheets and even make a worksheet from a Google form?
So you can access. So here I have a quiz option here. So if I swap this back to practice, let's go ahead. Well, actually, this is a lesson that I don't want to mess up. So hold on one second. Let's go back to my library from here for a second. And if I create a quiz, I can print that quiz as a worksheet. So don't think about it as a quiz. Think about it as a customized version of our practice. So in that case, I'd click on the 3 ellipses, download that as a PDF, and I can even as a teacher get the answer key that goes with it, download it, and it will send me a link to my email. So that's one way to download and kind of create your own worksheet within CK-12. If you were using a straight lesson with a practice attached to it, it would be available directly from that practice button where I chose customize. So let's just pick a different topic that I haven't swapped out. So let's say inductive reasoning. And here where it has this view practice option in the right corner, I click on it, and next to preview, I can download this worksheet. I can do the same thing. And what that will do, because it's not a fixed piece, is it will create a random subset of our practice and create it as a worksheet. You lose the adaptive component, you lose the auto grading component, but for those that need a PDF option or printed worksheet, you're welcome to do that there. So that is an option. If you're talking about Google Forms, that's something that you can do in Google Classroom, and you would do that through Google. That wouldn't be through us. So you'd have to check with them in terms of the best way to convert that to print if you needed a printed copy of that practice. But if you're trying to create questions in our system, then I would do that through the add question or create question option, and then you could print your quiz from your library or practice directly from that particular lesson here.
Okay, we had a question about kind of what happens in the publishing phase. So I'm actually going to go back to sharing the screen here. And, you know, Katie's shown you lots of different ways to customize our FlexBooks and our adaptive practice. But then there are things that you can do after customization.
Great. So the first thing you can do is you can assign any 2.0 lesson from this section of a FlexBook. So you can use the green assign it button at the top or in the toolbar under assign to class. That's an option to start with. So in that case, you would be assigning different pieces, that particular lesson with the attached quiz or practice. You can also assign multiple sections at once to a single class if you do so from the main table of contents. So if you want to do like a whole unit, start at the table of contents, click choose, and then pick assign. Now, alternatively, as I said, you could assign a related modality or quiz separately. So that's where if I created a quiz and I wanted to assign it, I could do that there. And just note that if you assign that quiz or that other modality, and then you click on the orange practice that might be related to it at the top, if you're assigning that practice, that is not part of a 2.0 lesson. It's not cleanly tied to any lesson that you might be working with, and it will pull from all questions across our system related to that topic. So just keep that in mind, that we highly recommend you assign a 2.0 lesson with the curated practice or with a quiz that you've kind of swapped out from there. Do make sure to have your students click turn in for any assignment. so that you can see the report for the work that they've done. Otherwise, you'll just get a note that says they need to turn in their work. Now, the second option is to share. So if you don't want to report for a lesson, you just want students to have something as a resource, you are welcome to use the share options. General share will allow you to post in Google Classroom, send an email with a link, or share something on social media. That also is the same if you use our little green SharePlane you might see kind of floating around our site. And then share to class, we'll add that resource in a CK-12 class under the resources section. So keep that in mind. You can also always share a page on CK-12 using the URL at the top. We do recommend doing this for, let's say you have a whole class FlexBook. Go ahead and share, use the share to class, or just the URL, so students can access the full book and see the work that they're doing in context. Just remember that sharing does not generate a report, so you do need to assign sections to your students themselves. And if students want to be able to actually access and turn in those assignments, they will need to access them from the assignment workflow. Don't have them access the book and kind of go to there, because if it's not pulling their assignment credentials from where they start, they won't be able to turn it in the same way. So go ahead and have them access assignments from the assignment workflow when you assign individual sections. Now, as we were just talking about, we don't usually recommend it because you lose adaptivity, you lose auto grading, you lose interactivity. You can download a PDF of a particular quiz or assignment or any of your customized FlexBooks and share that with others as needed for offline use. And now the last piece, coming to the question that was being asked, was publishing. So for any custom FlexBook or other non-quiz modality, we do recommend that you publish that and share it with others. And so when you click on the Publish tab option in the table of contents, you can do that kind of under Choose there, or on the left on any additional modality or older modality. And this then means that your content shows up under Community Contributed. So it's now available in search. So that's kind of the first step. By doing that, you make it easier for others to access that content. And it adds to the resources for the whole community. It's also a required step. You actually have to publish your content before you can add it to a schools page. Otherwise, it's not visible. So that is kind of the first step in creating a schools page. So what is a schools page, do you ask? Now, we recommend that you add your published books to a schools page, like the one I showed you in El Paso or this other one in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. This helps you and your colleagues and your students easily find all the books from your school or district. And it will help others nearby find you and maybe even collaborate in the future, which is kind of cool. Now, if you don't already have a schools page, you can click on the Can't Find Your School option link that shows up near the top there, and then fill out the form once you get there to get one added to the system. So I think with that, what we're going to do is we're going to wrap up some final pieces and then go ahead and answer any questions. So this is a good chance for you to get your questions all added to Q&A to make sure that we get to them before we wrap up. So go ahead and put those in there now while Lindsay does some wrap-up work.
Sounds like a plan, Katie. I do want to let you know that we have webinars coming up. If you are intrigued by this session and want to learn more about how to work in teams or implement CK-12 in your classes, our next CEP webinar, Strategies for Using CK-12, is on Wednesday, May 20th at 10 a.m. Then we start our series of webinars over again, where we're doing the same 3 in June. So the FlexBook 2.0 platform, if any of you missed that and you're wanting to attend, we're running that at Thursday, June 4th at 1 p.m. Pacific time. You can go to ck12.org/webinars to register for any of these and to see our archived webinars as well. Just a reminder that we do have the Certified Educator Program. So if you're brand new to the Certified Educator Program and would like to get more information about how to get started, go to ck12.org/certified and select the register button. We do love to receive feedback. If you have just a few minutes of time and you wouldn't mind answering some simple questions, this is the tiny URL that we use for our feedback form. It's tinyurl.com/CK12feedback1920. It's just a short survey, and that will let us know how we're doing and how we can improve for next time. So I'm going to go ahead and say thank you for joining us. And Jumpstart at CK-12 is an email address that you can use to get to our team. And don't forget to let your social networks know about CK-12 and your participation in our program. You can follow us or like us at CK-12 Foundation. And then hashtag CK-12 certified is a good one to search as well. So we have reached the hour mark, and any of you who need to drop off this webinar, again, thank you so much for joining us. You're welcome to go on about your day or finally go to bed, depending on what time zone you're in. But I'm going to kick it back over to Katie, and we're going to start plowing through the remaining Q&A questions.
Great, thanks, Lindsay. So the first question that we have here is, how do I put a FlexBook into my Google Classroom? So there's two things I want to make super clear. So one, as I said, this little green share plane in the bottom corner, if I click that or the general share within a lesson, I can share this on Google Classroom. This does not create an assignment, even though they have this kind of option here. Let's say I want to do my spring 2020 class here. This create an assignment workflow doesn't work. You need to actually assign from within CK-12, but I can make an announcement and say, here's your FlexBook, okay? And I can go ahead and I can post that. So that's one way to share on Google Classroom. Now, for any particular piece that I want to assign, I do need to actually go into a lesson, or from here, click Assign, pick my Google Classroom, connect to the classroom itself, and then I can go ahead and I can pick this section. So let's say the same thing, Spring 2020, choose my units, and I would go ahead and I would assign individual units from here. So let's say Nature of Science is due on Friday. So just remember that the sharing option is posting a link to the whole book, but this one is actually assigning this lesson where I can now see pieces. And the other option is I could simply pull and copy this URL at the top. So I would just highlight the whole thing, right click and copy, and then go to my class. And you'll see here that I posted a new assignment and I shared this link to the whole FlexBook. But I could even just say, here's your FlexBook, and then post it directly using the URL. So lots of different ways to share that, but keep that in mind that only one of those options, this actual assign from the assign workflow from CK-12, will actually give you a specific grade from there. We had a question on hints. Are they always on quizzes and adaptive practice, or can you change that as a teacher? So if I go ahead and I go to my library, the short version is that hints are always available on practice. You have the choice to turn them off on a quiz. I would say almost every question on our system has hints attached. If you find some that don't, please let us know. But otherwise, if I go ahead and I edit this, and I actually wanted to use this as a quiz, then I would deselect show hints, and now my students would no longer have access to that as I worked. So keep that in mind. We had a question on creating a drag and drop question with pieces, but right before I go into creating that specific type, we have someone that says, how can we share quizzes with colleagues? So if I go back for a second here, I can share this quiz using the URL, and I can send that to my colleague, and they can open it up and they can assign it to a class as is. If they're going to start editing, then they get kicked into our larger, like they want to customize it, they get kicked into our larger set of questions, and they can handpick their own questions from the same concept. But if you just wanted to share it where they did it, you would share this link with them, and then they should click assign to class, and they should be able to assign it to their class. If you're having any difficulty with specifics for that, please reach out to us at support and we can walk you through any piece there. But that's the short and sweet version of that part. So now we have a question on a drag and drop quiz question. So I'm going to add a new concept here just because I want to create one that's not math or science. And let's say we have, I want to do an English one. So we're going to create a drag and drop. We have the chef made pumpkin pie. So if I was going to create a drag and drop piece, I would put highlights on anything that I wanted. And then this is a category piece. So here my first category might be a noun. and then I would add a new category, which would be, let's say, verb. And then I would drag in each part. So chef and pie are both nouns. Made is a verb. And I would go ahead, if I wanted to add feedback for wrong answers, I would note the feedback for correct or incorrect answers. I could add a hint if I wanted to add a hint. And now I would have to tag it to a concept. So English, let's see what I have in my library for English. Search my library. We'll just tag it to the literature one for a second because I know that one was showing up there. And whatever the topic was, I could go ahead and I could submit that. And now if I wanted to preview that question, looks like I tagged something else to that previously, but let's go ahead and edit this for a second and I can click preview and show you what that looks like. But basically you create the content that you want, you select each particular piece, you highlight that, and then you go ahead and you drag it into the category choices you've had. So here, let's say I did this, and this, and this, and I checked it, and the verb and noun are swapped, so I got 1 out of 3 of those correct. So that's what it would look like in the long run. I probably want to put some sort of direction that says, sort the following words into nouns and verbs as you go.
All right, Katie, we had some certified educator program questions. To receive credit, do you have to remain on during all of the Q&A? No, you are welcome, like I said, to jump off at any time as we continue to answer these questions. If this is your last live webinar for certification, you've done the other 2, you do need to go to the Beyond the Certified Educator section of your CEP class and fill out a final form there. For the certification, do we need to do anything to prove we attended the session? You don't need to do anything to prove that you attended. We have attendance records, so that's not a problem at all. Katie, what is the full step-by-step solution for that you were in earlier?
Yeah, so this is 3.1. You're asking about that form, so make sure that you click this complete final form piece there to finish the program. And then the full step-by-step solution that was inside a quiz. We do have some pieces. Think of it as most useful for probably a math question versus like a vocabulary science question. In that case, there would be like the steps to actually solve out. And so if you wanted to create a question and you wanted to include that, some of our practice has step-by-step solutions in it, some of it doesn't. That's not something that we've consistently included, but it is sometimes available. And what you would do if you were creating a new one, so let's go ahead and edit this for a second, is if you see here, show solution. So if you wanted to create a sequence of things where the kids could see how they did and then see the full solution and figure out if they messed up something in the middle there, maybe they have a wrong negative sign or something, then I could click show any solutions that are available or create those solutions. But that's not the answer. You just need to add in the regular pieces. That's a bonus piece if you wanted to include it. And sometimes you'll see that in our system.
Okay, our team flagged a Canvas question for you. If I add a FlexBook or modality to a Canvas course using the integration, and then share the course with another user who imports the content into their own course, will the CK-12 content work in their course, or will they have to add the CK-12 content to their course through their own account?
It should work if you've assigned it through the external tool assignment piece and they are making a copy of your content. If they're kind of starting from scratch, they would need to use the external tool to pull over there. But if you create a whole course using all the assignment workflows and then you copy that course, someone else is adding it. I believe Canvas worked out the glitch that was causing issues with that a couple years ago. So far I haven't heard any issues in recent days. And can you schedule a quiz for a later date? So when you assign from here, you can assign directly. So in this case, all of our older platforms right now only have the option to put a due date. If I was assigning as part of a 2.0 lesson, I do have the option to put a post date to post it. That's true for any attached practice or quiz or the actual lesson. So let's say if I assign this to CK-12 or otherwise, any section that I pick or multiple sections that I pick, I can pick a start date. So this is where if I had an attached quiz, I could post date it and it would post in my CK-12 class or Google Classroom at whatever that start date was. We are working on options to make that available for other modality types, but right now that is an option in 2.0.
I think that's all of the questions in Q&A. So again, thank you all for joining us today, and we hope to see you on a future webinar.